Welcome to the Siren 13 webinar. Benny and I will be walking through today some of the content that we prepared for introducing the new latest and greatest in Siren that we just recently released. Just like before we go into that, like a brief overview, we are. So just introducing myself for those of you that I haven't met, like I'm Jefferson Zanning, I'm head of product for Siren, and I come from a technology background, worked like for companies like IBM and CGI over more than 15 years doing implementations and product development and product management, like in a number of different places, mostly in mission critical software. So especially law enforcement, energy, and oil and gas were some of the domains I worked. And most recently, the last half decade or so, I've been purely focused on product management and looking after developing products. And over to you, Benny. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thank you, Jefferson. So my name is Benny Wong, implementation consultant here at Siren. United States Marine Corps veteran, been in the military for 15 years, working two different branches. Currently am a sport law enforcement officer out of here in California, heavily interested in doing everything from patrol to forensics, sport law enforcement agencies, and also investigations. Currently do a lot of the statistics and data intelligence technology in the agency. What I do is I implement the solution, basically discover what the customer wants, sort of make whatever their vision is a reality. So thank you very much for having me.
Lovely. Thanks for that, Benny. So what we're going to talk about today is basically like a quick reminder of what is Siren's main purpose, right? Like just a brief overview on that, so we're all on the same page about it. Then we'll talk about Siren 13, very briefly, what are our main focus there to improve analyst experience and intelligence products. And then Ben is going to walk us through some of the real world investigations, right, that we have been enabling with Siren 13 now, that facilitated through this release. And then I'll briefly touch on what's coming up next. And we'll leave a few minutes at the end as well for any questions that you guys might have, and we'll be happy to answer. So jumping right in, Siren is a company focused on our mission to keep people, assets, and networks safe, right? Basically, it's our primary purpose is helping protect things and better look after that. So for that, we are using a number of different investigation activities, including government and corporations around the world. So be it law enforcement or financial services, pharma, federal agencies, e-commerce, and some of the big four consulting companies as well do some of their consultancy services using our software. And then on Siren 13, right? What have we achieved now? And this is where it gets very interesting. I recently did a blog post that some of you might have seen with Rachel. And this is a release that is special for me because it touches on a few points that are of personal interest as well. But we've leveraged now the ability to improve almost twice as fast search speed for when we are doing large joins, right? So there has been significant improvements on our Federate stack, which is basically our backend capability that processes large volumes of data to join them together in real time. And that's what powers our investigations. We have done significant improvements in this latest iteration to allow it to be a lot more responsive when you're querying large data sets. And I want to spoil it, but Benny will touch on some of what the typical large data sets that we encounter for these investigations that we have been finally able to breach it, right? And then we have a number of UX improvements. So overall, trying to streamline a few nudges, sometimes people find difficult, we restored some easier save buttons. We simplified a few operations on the graph. The dashboards now bring visualization features to be more meaningful. There's a number of small improvements in the UX, to try to make this experience a little bit more fluid to analysts, a bit easier to understand, and and we'll continue to work on that, right? And then we have the advanced sub searches with category icons, and I'm gonna share this a little bit just to show how it looks. I think it's very interesting and allow people to understand the data better, and also allow you to model the data better. So it's a lot easier to build the solution, and also easier for the analyst to understand it at the end. And then we also added the capability to create some ad hoc dashboard reports. So we had introduced before the ability to create reports for specific records. Now it's also possible to create like a custom dashboard report where you can produce like a Word document with your visualizations in it and so on. So that's just facilitate like the work of analysts on getting the information they need to compile and build like reports for other purposes in a much more seamless way. Now, we also expanded our auditing capability. I know like a lot of our customers already used auditing. We increased like some granularity and some like logging of information to be a little bit more detailed and go even further to what we were already doing. If you haven't seen yet, like we have some great examples of dashboards that show auditing information. So feel free to reach out to us, like if you want to very out of the box visualization that shows like auditing, and you can walk through what has been done, who did what, like when that happened, like we're happy to share that with you. And then we also focused on this latest release on improving the intelligence products we can produce, right? So like I had touched on before, we added the ability to embed whole visualizations inside the reports, which was something that we were missing. And that now allows you to create like a more sophisticated report that can be used in different places. We also enabled like the ability to export like much higher resolution graphs. So we had customers that needed like to either print like a very, very large version, or they needed to project it on a huge screen. So we had the ability to export these very high fidelity graphs now that should support like even bigger than an A0 printout, which is pretty large format. And last but not least, we also introduced like the ability to add vector layers directly from ESRI. So for those who already have a lot of geographical information using ESRI products, or even that just want to have a better map and get like an online ESRI base map, we made that very streamlined now. You can simply add to your enhanced coordinate map just an ESRI layer directly to it. So before I hand it over to Benny, I just want to very briefly show some of these capabilities in action, and a little surprise as well about something that we are bringing on. And so I just wanted to show how the sub searches work. So you see that before we allowed you to create like one level of sub search, but that was just like basically a save operation from the original entity table here. But now in Siren, you can actually configure a whole hierarchy of specialization. So you see here that I have like incidents. These are then broken down into criminal and non-criminal incidents. My criminal incidents can be non-violent crimes or violent crimes. Then if I look at non-violent crimes, I can have like burglary, larceny, motor vehicle theft, and so on. And like you can style all of these separately, and the same like for multiple different data sets. But the interesting thing is that they all can have different relations, right? So now your data model is a lot more flexible because they can have like their own individual relationships here, as long as the ones they already inherit from the parents. So that facilitates a lot of data modeling with more complex data, but also lets us bring more meaningful information for the analysts by providing better context here, instead of letting it to the analyst to filter this instance. So this is just like some of the improvements like with the sub searches. And the other thing that I wanted to show here is like some of you might have seen that we are doing a lot of improvements with Shadow Dragon that collects information from social media. Just to show a quick scenario here, you can search, for example, using dark web data. That lets you type a query. I know there is a nefarious organization that provides like legal material called House of Documents. and we can quickly have a search here to see what they are up to lately. And then these are all the hits that we got for House of Documents from Dark Owl. We can see here what is the most interesting for us. I'm just going to select some here, like a NHS COVID recovery certificate, for example. And then I'm going to confirm this. Oh, sorry, cancel instead of confirming. Let's go again. Okay, so, but this just lets you tap very quickly into like the vast amounts of data that exist in the dark web. And for those of you that already investigate the dark web, you know that there is some pretty horrible things there, and it's a criminal haven. So this is just a quick way of tapping to that and looking to leads and information, either originated from the dark web itself or from other suspects, right? And then when we do this, now we have this in real time fetched from Dark Owl and brought directly into Siren, right? Now I can get these records here, and I can see what I have related to it. And I'll see like not only we brought this data from Dark Owl, but we in real time processed it through NLP and extracted different information. So I'll see here like that they have emails related to them. I can have a look into those emails. So I know that I have this email here, and then I can see what I have connected to this specifically. So I can decide to expand this email by relation and see if I have any other related information connected to it. I'll see that this email also showed up in Shadow Dragon. So now the interesting thing here is like now I have this provider of information or illicit materials here that happens to be resuming here. And I know that they now show up in two different sources. And like I know that these are pages they created, right? So maybe I want to know a little bit more about those pages, so I can identify a little bit more information about that. I can simply create a filter for this. So I can filter my data here. I'll bring this to my Shadow Dragon monitor where we collect information, and I'll simply leave this filter there. Now I can see those two pages that they created. And I can see here the content, which immediately you see that there is a very interesting information because this criminal organization actually links here to a way of contacting them through Telegram, which is now a way that I can get further information, maybe even collect like a crypto wallet that they use to payments, right? So that I can continue my investigation through that route. But like another interesting thing is you see, we process this through NLP in real time, and our taxonomy system actually detected that there is like a dimension of a gun. And this is something that there wasn't in the other posts they had before. So you see that this one here doesn't have it, but like in the latest post they made, they actually mention a gun. And we can see here that is in yellow taxonomy threat. So, and we can see here immediately that now they not only are selling passports, visas, diplomas, and so on, but they're also expanded their business into guns. So it's just like letting you know, even without any of your own data, just like with out-of-the-box integration with other data providers, like already tap into this power. And this is just a preview of some of the things we're bringing on, which I'm going to talk in a little bit details later. Meanwhile, I'm going to hand over to Benny so he can talk a little bit about real-time investigations. Over to you, Benny.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Harrison. Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. What I'm going to basically walk through today are a couple of real-life applications where all of these improvements certainly benefit us in law enforcement, both from the tactical level to the strategic level. So I'm going to talk about one of the use cases that's very near and dear to me because I am still on patrol, and basically the outcome of the intelligence that gets provided from the people that are on the streets. Intelligence is everything. Data is everything. However, the problem that we have in law enforcement these days is that data is growing in law enforcement. Too many data sources with no way to be able to federate searches, basically isolate a commonality within all of that data. The volume of critical law enforcement data is way too large to be searched in real time, and current tools you have, regardless of whether or not they're computer-aided dispatch systems to records management systems to jail systems, jail management systems. None of that can be searched, first off, uniformly together. And if you can, any solution that you'd ever come across would require some heavy lift and heavy compute, which then translates to very long search times. What we offer here at Siren is scalable, high performance data repository, having a very high feedback and bringing in data in real time, but not only bringing in data in real time, but being able to search that data in real time, as Jefferson has showed. We have a simplified data import, no need to contract a vendor that models the data for you, because the way that we import data is something that, and I do this as well here at Siren, enable the agency IT teams to be able to bring in that data and model the data themselves. It's intuitive, real-time search capabilities provide analysts and even dispatchers with the ability to search the way they want to search. So what that translates to is an outcome where you're getting real-time results, you're getting real-time data, you're feeding in real-time data to the field. And this real-time data that we have these days in law enforcement can range anywhere from, again, computer-aided dispatch, data where you're looking at premise history, you're looking at information about prior history on persons that have been contacted before, all the way to LPR data, which is license plate reader data. We have systems out there right now that collect license plate data in real time, and we'd like to be able to search that, particularly when you're looking at a situation where there is a stolen vehicle or a carjacking, a robbery, where somebody has taken off on a vehicle, and we want to get those feeds immediately so that we can either tactically plan and place vehicles ahead of that, or be able to follow it and figure out the direction that it's going, or all the way down to open source intelligence data, which obviously is Twitter, whatever they want to post on TikTok, and et cetera, be able to get that real-time data feed so that we have an understanding of the person that we're talking to, the person that we're looking for, because investigations don't always happen after the fact. Sometimes investigations happen in real time. So that's how it'll affect us out here in law enforcement. Taking it back from the tactical perspective, we're looking at more of the strategic perspective currently now in law enforcement and any agency. There's a huge problem in the fact that, again, as mentioned before, there is a ton of data out there, a ton of useful data that we want to be able to make sense of and provide value from. Unfortunately, these days, there are a host of BI tools, business intelligence tools that can potentially do this, but none of them can realistically either do them in real time, or they're very clunky to kind of get around. Agencies are also not able to turn around this data in real time back to the stakeholders, community members, the police commission, city council, et cetera. And so what we provide is, fast implementations. We're able to bring in data very, very quickly into the platform. We have an integrated data model so that we already have an understanding of how the data fits into the mold. Dashboarding that will allow visualizations of this data in a very rich and robust manner, so that you're able to sort of visually see exactly where the effects are. This generates an outcome in where the immediate insights in the current crime trends gives command staff the ability to plan staffing levels to better serve the community, allows the command staff, incident commanders, to properly plan for large events, critical incidents in a data-driven approach, which is typically never done before, because before has always been purely qualitative and not as much quantitative based on the data. Provides the ability to coordinate directed patrols in order to suppress crime in high crime areas. What this means to us, and actually this is something that's also near and dear to me since I do deal with the data in my agency, we have taken data, and particularly in my agency, and I've been able to map out hotspots, map out where the most calls for service come from, as well as days of the week, so that we, like most other agencies out there having staffing issues, can properly plan for when to have additional patrols in specific times in specific areas. That's a very targeted way of looking at how to manage patrol these days, and it all starts from the top. So getting that insight can also help with telling your story to the community, letting the community know that you're there. This kind of data also gives insights into the commission, city council, so that when there is need for funding, you have a way to identify, what's needed and what are the actual what's the actual ask from the community, not based off of people complaining, but based on the data itself, based on the amount of calls for services, the amount of violent crimes, the amount of suspects, victims, etc. That concludes my portion.
Thanks, Benny. Much appreciated. Like, it's great to hear like from someone that actually does this on the field. Now, like looking a little bit into what's the future, right? Like, and this is just a very brief like a list of things that we are working on that you should be able to see soon. We are reshaping the layout for the dashboards. Like, one of the things we had a lot of requests were like to allow you to create stacked visualizations where you can have tabs, and so it makes better usage of the screen, right? So we are introducing like a new layout to let you do that. So you'll be able to now have like tabs in the visualization that you can have multiple ones and like go through them in a much more streamlined way. Then the next thing is like we're and I know this one, like I've seen some of the people in the call, like you did ask for this. So I know some of you will be keen on that. It's like allowing you to rename the fields, right? Like sometimes the data, people want to import the data as it is. And that means that the data comes with whatever name it came from somewhere else. So we'll allow you to then rename it temporarily, like in Siren. So everywhere else will show this styled name without changing the search name and having to deal with this in the integration level. And the next thing is like having the graphs on the sidebar. So this is a very important one because you'll be able to more easily create multiple copies of the graph, save you see different graphs, and also like add records directly to the graph without even opening it. So this should make the graphs a lot more interactive, and it also facilitate like having different versions of graphs and like having a much wider number of investigation. And then the last one on the first block there, like preferential direction for relationships. This is basically allowing you to mark like a direction that you want to use most of the time for certain relationships. So in Siren, like all relationships can go in both directions, right? Like, so if someone was involved in a crime incident, you're going to see that that from either when you're looking at the person or if you're looking at the incident, you're going to always see it. However, we're letting like now the graph have a preferred direction where you can say, oh, I always want to see the arrow going from the person to the incident in this case, because it's more meaningful to me. So this is another popular request for customers as well. Then the next section, we are expanding our data integrations, right? Like, so we are doing like integration with a lot of data providers, like I shown you, like Owl, Shadow Dragon, also Sayari, Webs, a number of other ones. And then we're also working on allowing you to import CSV files or Excel files directly from a secured folder. And this is an interesting one, especially for people that work like in a highly secured environment with critical data, because you can't let people upload data directly from their machine. So you need to only have access for files that are in secured folders. And in this case, we allow you to then fetch those files directly. And last but not least, we are also working on facilitating the deployment automation. And that is basically like we are expanding and documenting a set of APIs to allow you to actually copy configurations from one environment to the other, or automatically load the configuration in Siren when you're deploying a new environment, and even copy specific data spaces. Now, we have already some of this capability on the field, like through custom scripts and so on, but we're creating standard APIs that can be used for that. So it's a more robust process and also a lot easier to maintain and more guaranteed to work like across multiple versions. It avoids having any rework with custom implementation. And that's it for now. There is a lot more that we have in the pipeline. Be happy to follow up with anyone that wants to know more about that and have a further conversation about it. And with that, we can jump directly into any questions.
Yeah, it looks like there are a few questions that have come through. First one is, can police departments use this functionality already, or is that in the future? And I can tell that for myself since I do implementations, and yes, law enforcement agencies, police departments can use this capabilities, all these now, as I am well deep into some implementations for some of our customers. Jefferson, you want anything to add?
And I think like another question like we had as well was, what's a good way to assess the speed of my Siren deployment? I think this is an interesting one because we have a number of public benchmarks. Like, so you can always compare to our public benchmarks to see if you are making the best usage of it. But like Siren is designed to always return information in real time. So like it should always be possible. Now, unless you are hitting a hardware threshold, like so your machines are at 100% capacity, there is definitely room for improvement there, and we can help out with that as well. So if you compare to our benchmarks and for some reason you are not getting something similar to that, reach out to us and we'll make sure like you have everything the best way possible to reach that threshold. And there's more questions here. Which LPR vendor is used as a plugin? So usually, let me read it out loud. I read it to myself, but which LPR vendor is used as a plugin? So LPR data is usually collected by private providers, right? Like, so there isn't a public LPR data provider that we can just tap in and they will provide the LPR from everything. But different agencies or different localities, they do have LPR data collection. And we already integrated in a number of places with this data. Now, LPR is a very interesting one. And I can see there is another question that will be easy to answer with this one, which is which use cases benefit from the 2 times performance improvement, and like the LPR is one very specific to this, right? So if we, for example, got a lead saying we have a red Toyota Corolla, roughly this model, but we don't have an exact plate match, we can actually use that on our vehicle registration database if your LPR don't already have some of these capabilities to detect the model and the color and so on. But like you can look into the car registration database for all the vehicles that are Toyota Corolla red, rough year, and make the model, and you can then join that to all the LPR records to see which of those vehicles have been in the location that it was reported. And that is, you're talking about a join that goes from normally a few thousand to many billions of records, right? Like LPR data volume can be massive, like depending on the location, like the data collection is very, very big. And this is one of the use cases that we made like twice as fast. It's like doing into an extremely large data set. And this is what we use to integrate with local LPR data that the police agencies have.
So, and just to kind of add on to that, you have the localized LPR data that's caught from true LPR systems that reside in databases, but then you also have web-based LPRs like Block, things like those data vendors where it acts very similar to what you saw in Shadow Dragon. The mechanism's still the same. They respond to an API call, and all you'd have to do is run a search. You pull back a result, and that result already has a join to maybe your RMS system that already has a series of vehicles. Anything with a web-based API, Flock and Vigilant are like 2 of the big ones, right? With web-based API that can be tapped in. So
very good. And we have another question, which is what ESRI vector layers are. So ESRI vector layers basically allow you to add specific data sets or polygons to the map, right? Like, so you already have what we call base maps. That is like the ability, for example, to have like the satellite image or the streets behind your map. The vector layers allow you specific features to be loaded into the map. So one very common one, for example, it's like census tracts, right? So census information is distributed like for specific areas in every country, and you can load those specific areas with their census information, and then that can be clicked to see what is the information of that specific area. So you can select individual features in the map. Another common thing is to split like territory, and that can be like, depending on the place, it can be districts or it can be the area of like either each police precinct. Like, so there is a number of different like ways of dividing lands, and even like in some cases it can be points of interest, right? Like, so either landmarks, or even if you want to map your geographical location like that, you could even add like a suspect locations, or a location for target investigations, and these will all be like marked as individual features in the map. So the vector layers in ESRI can be used for that. But more usually it's to receive data produced by other people, right? So like the census data. And there's a number of other organizations that already produce geographical data that you can simply load into ESRI and see it in Siren straight away.
And actually, to kind of add on to that as well, as I've actually heard a couple of use cases where this is actually very, very powerful, especially with this very, very specific use case. But there are layers that cities have for poles that the city owns, and then agencies thinking about where to purchase, and this kind of piggybacks onto the other question, LPR cameras and where to place them. So then they use crime mapping based on the incidence of stolen vehicles on a map to indicate where they should probably place cameras on, and using the layers, the pole layers, figure out what poles to mount them on. So that was actually a really interesting thing that I actually from a couple of other officers out there working on.
Another question that we have is, when are the features coming? So I assume it's the features we just talked next. So for that, like all the features that are listed here, they are like for Q1 and Q2. So they're the ones that are coming soon. There's a lot more that I'll be happy to discuss another time, like what we're doing for Q3, Q4, and beyond as well. Okay, I think that's all the questions we had, unless anyone has any further question. No more questions. Lovely. Well, thanks everyone. It was great to share that with you. Thanks, Benny, as well. Like, it's great to always get your feedback and your input in this. Like, it's great insight. And I hope you all have a good one, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Bye.